Revolve Renewable Power is a developer and operator of renewable power projects in the US, Mexico, and Canada. And the company just completed its previously announced acquisition of WindRiver Power, a Canadian developer and operator of renewable power projects. Steve Dalton, CEO, is here to tell us what this means for the company. It's Wednesday, February the 14th. I'm Martin Gagel with Market Radius Research. Please remember, this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. Steve, welcome and congrats on getting the deal over the finish line. Please give us an overview on the acquisition and what it means for Revolve.
Yeah, thanks very much, Martin. I mean, probably a couple of weeks later than we had originally envisaged. I think when we announced the deal back in October, we were hoping to get us completed by the end of December. But no, I appreciate the effort of the WindRiver team and all their advisors to finally get it across the line. I mean, the announcement we put out yesterday, I think, is consistent with the announcement we put out in October last year. But just to kind of recap, I guess, on what we've acquired, which is a really, I guess, exciting portfolio of projects for the company. So we basically bought an interest in 3 operating projects, which consists of one 6-megawatt wind project based out in Alberta and a kind of minority interest in 2 operating hydro projects in British Columbia, which all have long-term kind of contracted revenues. Pretty consistent with the profile of projects that we've been talking about that we're trying to kind of develop and own and operate ourselves. Alongside that as well, there's 2 other development projects, which the WindRiver team have been working on for a number of years. Again, these are hydro projects based in British Columbia. And again, we're looking at those projects with a view of the call for power, which obviously BC Hydro announced last year, which is planned to take place later this year. So overall, I mean, a fantastic base of projects for us to kind of get into the Canadian market, which if you take yourself back to last summer, which is kind of when we announced our kind of plan to get into the Canadian market, I think fast forward 6 months, we now sit here today with obviously having completed the WindRiver transaction. We recently announced another 150 megawatt development project in Saskatchewan. So we've got around 230 megawatts, of either operating assets, excuse me, or assets under development now in Canada very quickly. So yeah, so no, delighted to get it done. It's the first step of our kind of overall strategy for Canada. So pretty hopeful of adding further projects, particularly as we go through the rest of this year.
Your hydro projects, those are your first hydro projects that you're operating, is that right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've been honest, I've looked at plenty of hydro projects over the years. Like I've been involved in the sector for a long time. So familiar enough with hydro. Obviously, we haven't operated any projects within the Revolve entity. But I think, again, another benefit of the WindRiver deal is that we have a huge experience kind of development and operating team coming across with the portfolio who currently operate those projects on behalf of the owners. So it's a good fit with coming with the team.
And they're run-of-river hydro projects. In case people aren't exactly sure of what that means, could you just give a very brief explanation on how run-of-river works on smaller hydro?
Yeah, so it's a bit different than let's say maybe some hydro projects that people are familiar with, where it involves creating a fairly large dam and kind of it uses the kind of backup of the hydro to kind of generate the electricity. This is obviously using the flow of the river. You divert the river into the power generation unit, and that creates the energy. So it's they're fairly typical projects from that perspective. I don't know how many are certainly in British Columbia, but quite a number of them, I suspect.
Yeah.
So they're fairly tried and tested technology around a long time, fairly well proven.
And now you've got a Canadian operating team, so we should expect some additional projects to be start development in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I mentioned, like we kind of announced our plans to get into Canada. Obviously, the overall kind of strategy of the company is to be a broad-based renewable operator and developer across North America. Canada was the last kind of key part of that. We announced back in June last year that our intention was to get into the market. We had targeted, I think, by the end of last year to have our initial projects under development. And if you look at what we've done in the DG business down in Mexico, we like to get into markets through an acquisition. We've been working on this WindRiver deal for a long period of time. So this kind of underpins our expansion into the Canadian market. And like I said, the kind of deal took maybe a small bit longer than we liked to kind of get it closed. So we ended up announcing a new development project in Saskatchewan, maybe before completion of the acquisition, but it's all tied together as part of a broader strategy. So definitely I expect us to be doing more. We're out there in the market currently, looking at other M&A opportunities potentially to add to this portfolio, also doing our own development work on the ground as well. So yeah, as I said, it's part of a much larger plan for Canada. And I think if you step back and just look at the kind of general renewable market across Canada at the moment, like it's very exciting, a huge amount going on. Like you've got the BC Hydro call for power that's ongoing this year. You've just had some plans announced in Ontario. I think back at the end of last year, I think they're looking at 5 gigawatts or something over the next 10 years or so. You've got a number of renewable procurement programs that are planned or ongoing or planned in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, so huge amount of activity going on right across the renewable sector in Canada. So I think it's a great time to be in the market. And as I said, this gives us a great base to kind of do more. And that's certainly the expectation, of the months ahead.
Steve, thanks a lot for giving us the update. Looking forward to seeing more news come across the wires in the next coming months and quarters, and talk to you again soon.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate it.